scout in the audience tonight. By name, his name would be Thomas Dirsa. He's always watched me play. Kind of nervous about this one.
Being the worst of the worst, then.
Back in the good old days of the Provincetown Fishermen hockey team. Or the Sedgwick Sharks. Or the Spirit River Leffley Honey. Game on!
Game on, Dirsa family. Grab the nets. Heck, grab Lori Jean, grab Kim, grab Max, grab Grandma Dirsa. Throw the sticks in the middle and let's get at her. Episode 53, straight off the pipe from the Heavy Hockey Network. 53 is not only our episode number, but it is also the age that Mr. Tom Dirsa does not look a day older than. And great job fitting all that handsome on one sofa there, boys. This is probably guaranteed to be our highest female viewership episode of all time, given what I see on the screen. So I just want to hand it over to you, and let's go. Pregame for Las Vegas. What do you guys think?
Well, I guess I got to start off by saying you got my mom quietly laughing in the kitchen here. She's not in the frame. I wish she was, because my dad doesn't get called handsome every day, and neither do I. So we'll take that from you.
I still think he needs some glasses, Dash.
That's fair.
Vegas coming off of a curb stomping of the Calgary Flames. So it's going to be a bit of a test. For a while we thought Vegas was on the verge of probably missing the playoffs, but they seem to be kind of getting it going again. So I think it's going to be a good game. I talked to Dad before about coming on, and he was going to say that Dave Tippett lost the room, but by the time I did get him on, the Oilers kind of figured it out for a bit, and he kind of gave Tippett a bit of grace, and then we went into that deep skid, and the coaching change was made. What do you think about the way Ken Holland handled that, Dad?
Considering the situation, what more could he do? I mean, you don't want to make a change when a team is all of a sudden performing. And Tippett was able to turn the tables a bit and get a winning streak going. But unfortunately, that didn't last. It went back. And my original comment about him having lost the room, well, I think he did, and I think the players realized that he was losing room, tried, and gave him an extra effort. But in the long run, there was no longevity to it. It just didn't happen. And you had to make a change. And I think that Holland had to look around, and were you going to bring in somebody from outside the organization that doesn't know the room at all? Or are you going to bring in somebody that is familiar? And I think he made a great choice. He brought in somebody that not only knew the background of the younger players, but also had a relationship with the older players. And there was a little bit of what I would call a new car smell to this change. And what I mean by that is when you get a new car, there's a different aroma in the vehicle. Then there's a time period of learning what knob or what switch does well and doesn't, what it does and what it doesn't do. And then there's obviously a test drive to see what kind of speed you can get out of the thing. And you don't jump from 0 to 100 clicks right away. You bring it up slowly. And I think that's what the new coach has done. And I think that the room has now a new appearance to it. And I think he's done extremely well. I think Oilers are one of those teams, once they get into the playoffs, are going to be more than a one-round team. I think they're going to surprise people. And they showed that the last time they played Colorado.
Yeah, I hope you're right on that. It is kind of getting old of first round and goodbye and getting swept is not cool either. I think the last few games here kind of can determine if they get home ice or not in that first round, and I think that will actually mean something. Now we're not playing in a bubble anymore. You touched on something that maybe we sort of forgot, that Jay was here before, as Todd's assistant to some of the guys that are still on the team. And then, he went down to Bakersfield after Todd McClellan was let go and coached some of the young guys on this team, the Kyler Yamamoto, Jesse Puljujärvi, Stuart Skinner when he was up.
McLeod, Bouchard.
Yeah. So, he's seen some of these guys from a head coaching standpoint and some of them as an assistant coach, and probably saw a little bit of what worked for Todd McClellan and what didn't work, and has kind of made some adjustments. He seems really eager and hungry and enthusiastic. And I put something out the other day, saying, I listened to the guy's interviews, and it's like he's the guy that's going to nurture these guys into Stanley Cup champions. And it reminds me of Glenn Sather. And there was a guy that misunderstood nurturing, thinking that I meant, bottle feed these guys and change their diapers. I didn't mean that, but it's a different coach in the NHL now compared to, when I was growing up, or, your style of coaching when you first started coaching basketball. I don't think you can be the Bobby Knight anymore and have longevity and long-term success. I think it takes somebody that's more geared towards, treating players, different players differently. I think you have to be more, of a all-rounded coach and be more than just a X and O kind of guy.
Well, one of the things there was two things about the new coach, and that is his ability to integrate the new players. I mean, they've come in almost seamlessly. Evander King, you think, has been with the Oilers for years, and the new guys, and along with people like McLeod. I mean, he's using McLeod's skills and set and plugging him in where he's been successful. And the other thing that he's done is he brought in technology. I mean, I don't think the Oilers have lost a review of offsides since he became coach.
Yeah.
I think he's something like 6 or 7 for 7 or 6. He's been able to bring that aspect of the game. He's much more technical savvy. Yeah, you're right. When I started,
and Jeremy Colton, we trust.
Yes. Yeah. And Holland did the job there, but the coach has been able to use him very, very successfully.
Yeah, we don't lose too many challenges. I don't think we've lost one in the Woodcroft era for sure.
Yeah, he's gone pretty well.
I like what your dad said about the dressing room being like having that new car smell. That relates to me. I like that analogy because it's almost like Tippett was an old car. And, I don't know if you guys remember that Seinfeld episode where they had that vehicle that you just couldn't get the stink out no matter what they did.
Yeah.
And that stink that was in that car was Tippett's inability to move away from his veterans and move away from that only thing that he would do and move away from, you talk about nurturing. Well, our buddy online doesn't realize a word can have multiple meanings. And sure, it could be diapering and feeding, but it also can mean encouraging development. And I'd say that's what Woodcroft is not only doing to a T, but Woodcroft, unlike Tippett, to me, is showing his ability to counterpunch. Tom hit the nail on the head there with his deployment of JP and Yamo and McLeod and Bouchard and these players that he's familiar with. And to Dirsa Jr.'s point there, he's familiar with, McDavid and Dry and Nooch from when he was an assistant coach with McClellan. And it's often the assistant coach that is doing the bulk of the communication with the team. So I'm sure he knows, every player on that team, and he seems to know how to push each one of their buttons. And like I said, that counterpunch has been completely evident. I feel that Tippett really failed to, in the moments, like look at the Chicago series, look at the Winnipeg series. Once Draisaitl and McDavid were neutralized, he couldn't find any other way to produce offense. He just couldn't. And I'm very encouraged by the opposite of that, and how Woodcroft has, to Tom's point, figured out how to deploy these guys with their advantages and disadvantages all right there. And it seems like he's got everybody moving in the right direction.
One of the things about digging a hole I learned a long time ago, the first rule when you're in a hole is to stop digging. And Tippett seemed to be able to grab the shovel and dig a little bit more, because he didn't change from one game to the next. It was the same thing. And I think a lot of teams got used to that. And the dressing room, the coach before the game plan for the opposite teams were nullify Drysdale and Connor, and don't worry about the rest of them. Woodruff's got the third and fourth line now producing, where you don't know where the next goal is going to come from. Surprise, surprise. Hat tricks start showing up in other places.
We got a comment on YouTube from it's hard to read, Lixie Locks, I think it is, saying basically that Woodcroft also uses his timeouts. I mean, as a head coach, you don't have a lot other than your matchups and calling a timeout as ways of interjecting yourself into a hockey game. I mean, I guess you could go the Jim Playfair route and start throwing water bottles and sticks on the ice and make it a yard sale, but you don't have a lot you can do. So to change the momentum, yeah, call a timeout. You can't stockpile them, so use them.
And he does it very effectively. There's a difference. There's the way they do a face-off right after a timeout. He mixes it up. The way he sets up his defense, he mixes it up after a timeout. When I was coaching basketball, that's what I would do when we were being successful defensive-wise, and the other coach called a timeout. I changed my defense, not because it wasn't being successful. It was because I knew the other coach was going to counter it. So change the defense, and the timeout becomes meaningless for that coach, because now he's seeing something entirely different. And more importantly, his players are seeing something entirely differently. And if they haven't been coached to see a difference, then we have an advantage.
You got something to follow there, Dash?
I just think that's really well said. Yeah, I love the analogy again. For sure. I think that ultimately the deployment of the timeout has been important. I think what you guys said, and being able to use only certain and particular times of a hockey game to be able to either, talk to your ref, talk to the team, get a break, throw that extra line out. But, what your dad's saying in terms of what he did as a basketball coach and what have you, sure. I mean, no different than a quarterback that's calling an audible at the line of scrimmage. You know what I mean? Like, why would you leave that same defense out there that the offense just had a chance to have a look at and a 2-minute strategy to talk about? So, yeah, good point by the listener as well as your dad.
So yesterday, tragedy struck the NHL with the loss of New York Islanders legend, multiple 50-goal scorer Mike Bossy. Dad, do you have a Mike Bossy memory?
Yeah, in fact, it was one with your Uncle Jim. We were at one of the playoff games, and it was a tight game. I'm not sure what year it was. I think it was I think the Islanders went on to win it, so it was probably the last year the Islanders won the Stanley Cup. Anyway, there was a rush down coming towards us. We were at the end of where the nets were, the one end. And I will swear to this day Mike was offside. But anyway, it wasn't called. And he ended up scoring the goal that won the game for them, and then they went on to win the series. And I think that was the last series the Islanders would win against the Oilers. And I just wish that present-day coaching...
You're calling for video review now?
Yeah, exactly. Because I could swear to this day it was offside, but of course no review. It was purely the referee that had to make the decision. Linesman had to make the decision. And that's my Mike Bossy moment. He was a great player. I mean, there was no doubt about it. I mean, you just look at his list of accomplishments. He deserves to be in the NHL Hall of Fame. But that's when the word came of his passing, that's the image that came to my mind.
Mogan Netterfear.
I think it was Fuhr. Yeah.
That had to have been pure. It wasn't pure till the next year.
Yeah, it was.
That'd have been 1983.
Yeah.
Or 1982 playoffs, pardon me.
Yeah. And like I say, my brother-in-law had tickets right about 3 rows up behind the net. We had a great look at that. And I still think that Mike crossed that and the puck came with it. I think both skates were over when he... Anyway.
Oh.
Funny how you have those snapshots in your memory,
exactly.
Of things that happen in life. And I'm sure from Tom's perspective, that thing is still 1080p HD picture. Remember both of Bossy's skates on the other side of that blue line. And don't think he wouldn't have known either, because Mike Bossy is probably one of the gracefulest players we've ever seen hit the ice. And I remember that series in 82. I was young, but our family used to sit around the couch and never miss a playoff game in the mid-80s. And so, watching Mike Bossy play the wing for probably, if not the most dominant dynasty, one of the most dominant dynasties in the history of hockey, and be an integral part of it was incredible. With a bad back, he scored 50 goals or more in 9 seasons in a row. Mm-hmm. Gretzky only did it 8 times.
Yeah.
Going back to back is puts you in the dynasty conversation by itself. To do it 4 times in a row is quite the feat.
What do you guys think about Carey Price and his game last night?
Oh, you mean the Edmonton Oilers' future goaltender for next year? I thought it was amazing.
I was wondering if anybody was going to mention that.
I got a sneaking suspicion. We'll see. I hope so. It was great to see him back out there. Great to see the ovation he got. Great to see him back on the ice and being able to battle what he has. So, awesome. Second star of the game.
Yeah, and I think the same as you do, Dash, and that fingers crossed that he's come September, he's wearing a little blue and gold.
Blue and orange?
Blue and orange.
I would love it. Oh, he can wear it. Well, it's the reverse retro next year, so we don't know. The copper might be back.
Yeah.
Tom might be right.
I still think that one of the great I wouldn't say disaster, but one of the things that I just did. I just give a sigh is the loss of the oval drop uniform. The one, I think, what's the name of the... McFarlane design.
McFarlane.
I kind of like that one.
Coming back next year.
Rumors it's back, yeah.
Oh, it'd be great.
Your grandson has one.
Yeah.
Mom didn't want to be on the pod, but she's on the pod in the background. So, if you have any questions for my dearest mother, that Dad was going to basketball and I was playing basketball, and then I was changing in the car to go to hockey. But it was Mom that was taking me to hockey. I wouldn't have a hockey career if it wasn't for that woman.
Well, I did say grab Grandma Dirsa at the beginning, so I'm glad she actually listened to me, because her son never listens to me. That's for damn sure. I have a question then, if that's the fact.
I heard you loud and
Mrs.
clear.
Dirsa, with all due respect, since your son is in his mid-40s and he still refuses to ever follow any rules, can you explain to me what it would be like and what kind of patience you needed to show as a mother for a child that just can never stay within parameters?
Do you really want me to answer that?
Yeah.
Oh, please. I've got all day. I'll skip the game to listen.
I'm standing here looking at 2 of them that I still haven't figured the answer to that to. When you live in a house where sports is the number 1, you either go with it or you're out to lunch. From the time I was little, I played sports. I even played on a girls' hockey team myself. And it was one of the most interesting experiences ever. And for a 71-year-old to be outside 2 days ago playing baseball with school kids was amazing. The kids thought that was pretty good, that a great grandma could still get out there and run and hit and
she
pitch.
she can still pitch.
You know what, Dash? I think my mom has as many hockey fights on her resume as I do. We both have one.
Sounds to me like you and Tom can go do your own podcast. I think Dash and Mrs. Dirsa is the new show on heavy hockey.
Are you saying I talk a lot?
You have to.
It takes one to know one. I don't know. Your son doesn't get a lot of words in when I'm on the air. So.
Well, I kind of overrule him. But anyway, have a great day. Good luck at the game. We'll be cheering as we're driving home to Leduc.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah,
Sounds fantastic.
Mom,
all right, I got a question for Mr. Dirsa too before I jump into Rogers Place over here. We've there's published statistics out there from my junior and senior hockey careers that says I was somewhere around a 30 goal scorer, 30 assists, and 300 penalty minutes a guy kind of player. Your son, on the other hand, has we've just had to listen to heavy hockey straight off the pipe folklore. That he tells us that he played the wing like a point guard and with the grace of Michael Jordan and deserves the Lady Byng equivalent trophy in Provincetown. I would love to hear the real story.
Well, actually, I'll give you one particular instance. We were down in Lethbridge playing a basketball tournament. We got beat out early on Saturday. So we drove from Lethbridge just south of Sedgwick because he was playing also hockey for the Sedgwick hockey team. And his mom picked him up. What was the town?
We had to go to Consort.
Consort, yeah. So they headed off to Consort, and I headed with the team back to Sedgwick. And he got on the ice. It was probably midway through the first period. On his first shift, he scored a goal, and then he got an assist later in the game. Probably one of his better games. I think he ended up with 3 or 4 points that game. He was a sneaky hockey player. He would appear all of a sudden in a position where he could do some damage. And the other thing, he was pretty fair defensive player. In fact, when he went to the States and played on a hockey team in the States, the coach made him a defensive player. It was probably the only time in his career that he played just defense, not off on the forward line. And he was one of the things is in New England, there weren't a lot of kids that could skate backwards very gracefully, and Mike had that ability, so that made him a defenseman to start with. Not a bad hockey player. Unfortunately, life led him to other things. He ended up playing volleyball, of all things, at the college level. He played for the Lakeland College team for 2 years in volleyball because they didn't have a basketball team, and they didn't have they had a hockey program, but not a hockey team. But he's not a bad athlete, and what I liked him as a coach and as a father was he was extremely coachable. Believe it or not, he didn't argue too much, and he listened and applied what he was shown and taught. And to be honest with you, had life gone a different way, I could have very well seen him become a. Well, he's a coach. He's coached baseball and hockey and basketball, so he has that ability and technique. He's a skillful athlete. I don't think I've ever told him that.
I probably owe him like a 60 of Jack Daniels for that speech there, Dash.
And what do I get out of it?
You don't like Jack, so you
and
don't.
Checks in the mail back to Leduc. That's all I know.
Well, I thought it was.
And that backfired on me big time. That's not the answer I expected. Jeepers.
Yeah.
We don't try to compliment each other very much on this show.
Well, I be honest with you, I think that's probably the first time he's ever heard that from me.
Dash, ask him if he's ever seen me in a fight on the ice.
No.
Have you ever seen Mike in a fight on the ice?
Wasn't
Tom?
it that girl on that team that?
Dad's going with my minor hockey, like in Alberta, was mainly in Sedgwick, Alberta, about 45 minutes from Viking, and about 45 minutes an hour kind of the other way is a little town called Irma. And the Oilers actually had a 40-year-old rookie, Gordy Marks, come from Irma, but when I played bantam, they had a girl on their team, and everybody on our team, I guess that male pride or whatever wanted to run this girl over, and she was pretty tough. She kept getting up, and if you're gonna be out there, I guess you gotta play with the boys, and they took runs at her. I didn't really do that. I was trying to put some points on the board, but definitely guys on my team did. There was one fight in my minor hockey career, I believe, in Manville. I got into kind of a one-punch kind of affair, and I wasn't the one that went down. So, and I didn't even get a penalty. So that was, I guess you couldn't even call it a fight. And then I got in one fight in senior hockey. So I wasn't like you. I wasn't dropping the flippers all the time.
I wasn't like you. Yeah, you could ask my mom the same question, and she probably just would answer too many to remember. To be quite honest, and she's only seen about a quarter of them, so that's saying something. Well, I see everybody starting to flood in here. I just wanted to say, I know you're Mike's dad, and even though I'm sure you probably don't watch our show, but if you actually do, then you'd know that I give that boy of yours a pretty hard time. And it's funny because Jack Michaels was on our show recently, and he told a story about how he had how he and Bob Stauffer have, the most unique friendship, and Bob is his most unique friend for the reason that, he'll be the first one to jump down his throat, and he'll be the first one to keep him in line, but he'll also be the first one to have his back. So, it related to me because I think that's the relationship that Dirsa and I share. I'll be the first one to straighten him out and make sure I chirp him to know better. And you're right, he doesn't really argue or fight back, which is a great guy to be in an argument with. But, given that, just like Jack and Stoff have that unique friendship, so do we. So you should be proud that boy you raised has more character and his pinky finger than most friends that I've met over my lifetime. So I just would say, before I jump out here, it's been a pleasure to be on the show with you guys. Coming up on the 1-year anniversary that I lost my father. So when this episode is done, you boys have a hug and enjoy your weekend.
Thanks, Dash. And the other thing is, I enjoy the rapport between you and Mike. That's what makes the show.
Yeah. Well, like I said, he doesn't fight back or argue very much. So.
That's because
it
I
makes it
kept
easy.
him in line.
Yeah. My mom's all class.
Okay, I'm going to jump off and get into Rogers. You talk about the Vegas game, and I look forward to listening when I get out of there, and keep going with the show, and peace and love, and let's go Oilers. Hey, by the way, I'm undefeated in the building this year, so you can guarantee a win. You want to talk about a quick prediction?
Oilers 4, Vegas 1.
I'm not going to follow that up. I'm just going to go with what Mom said.
6-4, Oilers.
You're in for a barn
6-4 Oilers, 4-1. Mike will never argue with his mother. I appreciate that. Let's go. I'm going to go halfway between you guys. 4-3 Oilers in regulation.
Very good.
2 more for dry.
Dash, get in there. Enjoy the game. I got to let Mom and Dad drive back to Leduc. So thanks for watching, everybody. Check us out on heavyhockey.com if you want to check out some articles from all the guys that contribute. Looking for some lady writers as well. You can follow us on YouTube, like and subscribe videos, and enjoy the game, everybody. Let's go Oilers. Keep your sticks on the ice. Keep reaching for the stars. Thanks for joining. Have a good day, everybody.